Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar for retiring from Chevron, and we're going to go over some planning opportunities that we typically see missed by retiring Chevron folks. Talking today is going to be myself, Chad Seegers. I'm managing partner here in the Houston office. Brian Stormont is my partner out in our San Ramon office.
Morning, everybody. Yeah, the opportunity today is to really kind of go through some of the nooks and crannies of some of the benefits at Chevron and just really make sure you understand some of the nuances there. So some of the areas we're going to revisit are going to be the segment rates, which obviously is a big topic of conversation with interest rates and fluctuation. The after-tax to raw strategy, which is something that's becoming more commonly known about, but we want to make sure people are aware of it. And we'll talk about healthcare and long-term care benefits, estate planning, and then just kind of some timelines you want to think about as you approach your target retirement date. So hopefully it's going to be an informative session for everyone. And we're going to get started with discussion around the segment rates. So Chad, I'll let you take it from there.
Thanks, Brian. So you may have heard of segment rates. What are they and why are they important? The IRS has baseline rules around every pension in the United States, and these segment rates, which are tied to interest rates, come out around the middle of the month. Why are they so important? Well, with Chevron's pensions specifically, they are a very large determinant in your lump sum and how that lump sum is paid out. In general terms, interest rates going up like they have been in the past 1 year means your lump sum falls. The other side of that, if interest rates are somewhat stable, these things are fairly predictable. If interest rates are falling, then you're going to have an increase in that lump sum. And the way Chevron segment rates are calculated are pretty unique. They're going to throw out the 2 months prior to retirement and then average together the 3 prior segment rates for your effective segment rate when you pull the trigger. And that is going to be effective the first of the month after you retire. We're recording this in September of 2023 now. So if you retire in September, we know you're going to have the October 1st effective segment rate. So that's the general idea that you need to know. Interest rates up, bad for the lump sum down, interest rates down, good for the lump sum. So if you see here in the far right box, this is an idea of what's going on with the federal funds rate. Everyone hears about the Fed raising interest rates and having meetings and mortgage rates going up. What the Fed has done is stair step interest rates to an environment where they want to slow down inflation. And what the Fed is telling you, if you look at the blue here, is the chart from JP Morgan. They get their data from the Federal Reserve and from Bloomberg, is the Fed is telling you they're likely going to be lowering interest rates in the more intermediate term. When I say intermediate term, 18 months or so out. It's tough to say when it actually occurs. And so that downward trajectory with interest rates is very likely to be an increase in that lump sum, whereas this stair step up that we've seen since 2022 has been a decrease to that lump sum. And we go through these cycles. As you see, the past 20 years, the Fed will hike interest rates to a point where they feel is restrictive for the economy. They'll pause for a period of time where this thing flatlines, and they'll begin to cut interest rates and turn to stimulate the economy again. So this is something we watch very carefully for all of our clients. We actually send out a segment rate watch newsletter every single month for people to keep you informed. If you want to receive that, send us an email. We're happy to add you to the list. Next thing we're going to cover is the after-tax to Roth idea.
So here, one of the problems that we see a lot of time with our Chevron retirees as they're preparing for retirement is that they have little to no tax diversification with their assets. They've got a large 401k. They've done a great job saving, but it's by and large all pre-tax dollars. And then, of course, to the degree that they decide they want to take the lump sum, by and large, that's going to be also pre-tax dollars. So oftentimes they've kind of, in a sense, painted themselves into a corner from a tax perspective because every dollar they need to get to be able to support their lifestyle and pay their bills and so forth, they're going to have to pay income tax to get to that dollar. So in fact, to get to the dollar, it's going to cost you maybe $1.25. And so as that builds up through the year, of course, that builds up your tax bill for the year, and then any unexpected expenses coming along can really blow things up. So what we really want to do is try to focus on helping clients build a more diversified tax base as they're moving towards retirement. And one of the great ways to do that is use this, what we call the mega Roth or supplemental after-tax strategy here. And so what we're looking at with that particular strategy is putting money into the 401k plan. The first tranche of those dollar contributions are going to be the $22,500 contribution into the plan. Now, what we find for a lot of employees is that for the higher earners who can afford to frankly utilize all of these tranches, they need that tax deductible contribution. That $22,500 has to go pre-tax because they want to reduce their tax bill for the year. And of course, if they're really shoveling money into the plan, if they're over age 50, they're going to want to then do the $7,500 also potentially pre-tax. Now, there are some legislative changes that have happened recently that may change some of the pre-tax or after-tax. That's a little in flux. But for the purpose of today's discussion, we'll assume it's pre-tax. So at this point, if you're kind of keeping score, we're at $30,000 going into the plan. Add to this strategy the dollar amount coming from the employer, because that also gets factored into the overall number. So let's say in this example, Chevron's making a $15,000 match to the 401k plan. Now we're at $45,000 going into the plan. There's still another tranche of contributions that could go in on top of that. That's that after-tax supplemental contribution, which can be made. In this example, that contribution is going to be $28,500. Now, if you're adding all this up, that means that for the calendar year, you've put in $73,500. And here's the great part, that after-tax contribution, you can move that over to a Roth IRA. Now, you might be wondering, well, wait a second, I make too much money to contribute to a Roth IRA. That's probably true for a traditional Roth IRA. There are income caps. With this mega Roth strategy through the 401k plan, there's no income limitations. Also, this year, if I wanted to make a traditional Roth IRA contribution, I'm capped at $7,500. Doing this strategy in this example, you're putting in nearly 4 times as many dollars into the Roth IRA. So this is a strategy that we find that people that are kind of mid to late in their career, if they have the cash flow bandwidth, this can be fantastic dollars. And now you've plunked $28,500 into a Roth IRA. All that future growth is tax-free when you take withdrawals. And man, does that make a huge difference, we find, with clients when they're getting ready to do some withdrawals that they didn't expect in a calendar year.
Brian, that's a great point. There's a specific wrinkle you talked about in there, which is getting that future growth out of the after-tax piece and into the Roth. One thing I would add is a big, I wouldn't say error, but suboptimal scenario we see is when we take a look at the balance of your after-tax bucket within your 401k. A lot of times that's several $100,000, and people may feel like they have access to that going into a Roth. However, that's not the case. What you have access to are the contributions going to a Roth once you pull the trigger and retire. And so the reason you engage in this type of scenario and this type of plan, doing it on a consistent basis, is because you're putting that growth in tax neverland inside that Roth, rather than letting that money grow over a 10-year period of time. But the rule says you can only move those contributions to the Roth IRA. And so we'd recommend that you do this systematically.
Yeah, absolutely. And Chad, just a real quick sort of call to action, if you will. Everyone who's listening to this webcast, if you've got a Chevron 401k plan, do me a favor and go take a look at your Fidelity statement. Now, we all know the Fidelity statements can be a little convoluted, but really buried deep in the back end of the statement, there's going to be a section that talks about after-tax contributions. Take a look. If you have money in there, you're going to want to get that over to Roth IRA. Unfortunately, we do run across quite a few people where over the years, they maybe made some after-tax contributions, didn't realize it, could have moved it over to Roth and didn't do it. And now any growth that happens in the 401k, they've got to pay taxes on it. Had it moved it over to the Roth previously, that growth would be tax-free. So even if we never get a chance to talk with you, I would heavily recommend you go take a look at that just to see if that's an option that you should be taking advantage of.
Also, I just want to recap something you did say, Brian, to remind people, we get this a lot. There's no income limitations when you're doing this sort of mega Roth strategy, correct?
Absolutely. There's no income limitations, and that's a huge difference between traditional Roths. big misconception. We want to make sure people are clear on that.
Now let's take a look at healthcare and long-term care. Biggest thing you need to decide is what insurance provider will you use. We have a lot of clients that are plugged into a specific physicians group that they happen to like. Maybe you want to continue to use that. That's going to be dependent on what insurance they take. You also have to consider what points do you have. Are you at 75 points where you get a grade in? Do you have a full 90 points, age plus years of service? If you're going to go out before 65, what are you going to do as a bridge until Medicare comes in? Once you get to Medicare, what are you going to do about those supplemental policies? Which policy is going to make the most sense for you? We absolutely recommend talking to specialists when it comes to those supplemental policies. Chevron does a great job of reimbursement for those guys. This is something that you really want to model. Something we didn't put in here is, healthcare costs, I think everyone knows, has grown by more than most things in our economy. And for planning purposes, we always assume at minimum a 6% cost increase for healthcare. And so you want to consider that, as you're looking at retirement. Another piece that you should consider is a long-term care component. There are options through the employer. They are not necessarily a guaranteed option, meaning you want to consider, if I'm paying an insurance company money, am I guaranteed some benefit for that money, or can they increase my premium, 10 years down the road by 30% in 1 year? And by the way, most states that is allowed without some type of special exclusion. And so you just want to be careful with what you're doing there. We review a lot of long-term care insurance policies. We always ask the question, can I self-insure? And you always want to have some type of long-term care plan in place. And reason being is 70% of people are going to need some type of care within their life. 15% of people, once you hit 65, you're going to spend more than 2 years in a nursing home. It's kind of staggering, and cost of care is going up. Most people want to be taken care of at home. Our experience in working with clients for almost 20 years now is it's going to be a blended transition. You've probably seen this, unfortunately, with some of your own family members. You want them to be as comfortable as possible. Median cost of care for somebody with dementia currently right now is around $115,000. So this is something that truly we try to plan well in advance for, especially if there's any type of family history. What we do first is we'll model a long-term care event for one spouse or an individual, and that event will take place at age 75 or 85 for a period of time, 4 years, 4.5 years. And we want to ask the question, if we actually go through this long-term care event and we don't have anything in place, can we self-insure? And if we can't self-insure, or there's concerns about our asset base depleting, well, then at that time, what are the best tools available? With us being a fiduciary, a fee-only advisor, we don't sell or manufacture any products. And so these are things that we can truly look at from an analytical standpoint and come up with the best solution of something you may be seeing out there, something you may have in place. Frankly, we see a lot of older policies. Some of them are very, very good that we tell people don't ever let lapse, because they don't make policies today that were as rich as they were 15 years ago. But these are scenarios we want to run through and make sure you guys are okay. A lot of people don't want to worry about being a burden on their kids. And so this is something that happens to people, unfortunately, 15, 20, 25 years into retirement. And so you do have a bit of a runway to plan for this, but you want to start planning for it sooner than later. We consider this a critical component of retirement planning, really and truly.
And just really, I'm going to quickly interject on that. Again, as a Chevron employee, the critical part here is that you have access to a long-term care policy through your group plan. It's provided by Genworth. So if you have the desire to get long-term care insurance, you can get it through the plan. And as a California resident myself, what I can say is there are fewer and fewer providers that are offering long-term care policies in the state of California. In fact, Genworth does not offer a policy in the state of California to the general public. So employees of Chevron can access a Genworth policy through the group plan, but the minute they separate from service, if they said, hey, I want to go get a Genworth policy, can't do it in California. So again, these are some of the benefits that are in the plan that are available to you that we want to make sure you're aware of, and that if you want to take advantage of, you do so before you separate from service. So again, really understanding, am I going to be able to self-insure, or do I want to go get a policy? Really important question you want to be asking before you jump into retirement. In connection with that is estate planning. So here, this is another benefit that's available to Chevron employees. So if you have supplemental life insurance through the group plan, you have access to very low cost estate planning services through the MetLife supplemental life insurance plan. We actually have a service we provide to our clients that actually comes at no cost to establish their estate planning documents. But really, let's just talk briefly about why you want these things in the first place. Why do you want maybe a revocable living trust? A lot of times, I'm sure Chad can agree with this, we have clients say, well, I don't need that. I don't have a complex estate. You don't need to have a complex estate to want to have these documents in place. Really, certainly here in California, one of the first things you're trying to do is avoid probate. California probate is notoriously slow and expensive. Basically, your estate is being dragged through the court system, and it slows down the distribution to your beneficiaries, the people you want that money to go to. So having a revocable living trust essentially sidesteps that. It's essentially like being able to go into the Lexus lane on the highway, if you will. So you're basically able to avoid the probate process, having a proper estate plan documentation in place. Past that, there's some neat things you can do to have control over how your beneficiaries utilize those assets. There are some estate tax mitigation tools that are available for people that have a higher net worth. And then really, being able to, again, try to put some control around the assets and, again, avoid probate. That's the major benefit of having these things in place. Lastly, there are things like medical directives, powers of attorney. These are really important documents that if something happens to you and you're incapacitated, it tells other people what you want to have happen. So really important documents you're going to want to really think about having. And again, through the Chevron supplemental life insurance program, you can get access to that at a very nice discount. And then we actually have some tools that allow our clients to generate those documents at no cost. So it's something we would absolutely recommend people consider obtaining.
Thanks, Brad. I think one thing to add to that is once you get documents in place, a common error we see is some brilliant documents, sometimes very costly documents, and they do some wonderful things, but your assets are not actually coordinated and titled in accordance with what your documents say. Meaning, are your beneficiaries updated on your retirement plans? Are they updated on your life insurance policies? Have you changed any titles on real estate that you may own? That's a common oversight that we see as well. And so we want to make sure that that is coordinated and we collaborate with your existing estate docs with your overall assets as well. So let's take a look at some milestone dates. 3 to 5 years prior to retirement, the questions you're typically asking, will I have enough money to retire? If I'm in a scenario where I'm enjoying my job and 3 years from now, who knows, maybe there's another ROM, maybe there's another round of packages that are being offered, and maybe you don't want to stick around and see your projects through, and you're considering whether or not you should accept that package. This is a very common analysis that we run for clients. A lot of them have their plans done already, and so we have those scenarios actually built out. Are you maximizing your tax diversification? This is something especially to consider if you're thinking about going out the door prior to 59 and a half. This is something that dovetails into what Brian was talking about with after-tax contributions and making sure those are optimally allocated to a Roth IRA to get future growth outside of being tax land. Do I understand how I'm going to utilize your Chevron benefits, healthcare piece? When are you going to pull the trigger on your CRP? Do you want to make sure you have a will in place before you leave because of the supplemental policy? Do you have any other types of retirement restoration plan that's out there? What are you going to do with respect to healthcare if you have enough points or if you don't have enough points? Um, Typically, this is when you start to actually meet with an outside advisor and get objective advice. And if you notice, this is not advice around, how should I manage my money inside the 401k? This is true financial planning advice with respect to decisions that need to be made that are going to affect you, very near 3 to 5 years, but also 10, 15 years down the road.
Absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Chad. I think that when you're in that final stretch, you're about to make a transition into the next phase of life that literally is going to last on average 20 to 30 years. And so you really, we would, say, want to be sure that you haven't overlooked critical factors that will make their presence known 5 or 10 years down the road if you haven't thought about them, and perhaps detrimentally affect your retirement plan. So that's where we come in oftentimes, is we're helping our clients think through all the nooks and crannies of what it means to be retired, make sure they've really factored in all those other expenses that we see our actual retired clients running into. And oftentimes people don't think about because they just haven't experienced it. They don't have that life experience in place.
So 1 year out, what's your target retirement date? Is it going to be April 2nd or later? Will I work, 1 day in that quarter so I get a prorated SIP the year after I retire? What am I going to do for healthcare coverage? Do you know how your LTIPs are going to be affected? What are you going to vest in? What are you going to give up? What's on the table? What about your pension? Are you going to take the annuity? Are you going to take the lump sum? What are segment rates doing? What type of interest rate environment are you in? Pulling the trigger in retirement, by the way, separating from service and actually quitting, does not mean you have to execute that lump sum. Okay, so those are two different things. We've had people that will retire and they'll wait for a period of time if we happen to be in a falling interest rate environment, because that is a sort of 6-week look ahead that you have with respect to that lump sum value. And if it's more or less a guaranteed increase in that lump sum because interest rates are falling, that's a pretty good environment to be in. Am I maximizing my 401k? Meaning, if you typically maxed out by November or December every year, but you're going to retire in July, we need to change what that contribution mix is to optimize. If you are like many of our clients and you're going to be moving somewhere else when you retire, we start to plan on moving transition costs, building that retirement home cost, because those are a lot of times out of pocket after tax expenses. And so 3 to 5 years out, we're preparing for these projects, to fund these projects in different ways. And so the mix of what you're putting into the pre-tax 401k may be a little bit different depending on your own personal objectives. And so we're doing some analysis to determine, where do we need to be putting money from a asset location perspective.
Yeah, and Chad, it's not uncommon where we do have a lot of folks that want to get through the first quarter and basically separate in April to get the prorated SIP for that calendar year. And so what we're often doing is with the 401k is we're calling proactively to Fidelity late in December, because remember, it takes a pay period or two for those contributions to change, to make sure that they do fully maximize their 401k contribution. Maybe they're doing that mega raw strategy. They want to get that all in before their last paycheck comes in April. So again, those are conversations we certainly want to have with folks about, okay, well, when does this all get executed timing wise?
So 90 days prior, do you have your pension paperwork in order? Have you requested your packet yet? Do you know what the estimates are going to be on that lump sum? Do you have your estate docs in place? If you have that supplemental life insurance through work, do you have a will? Have you used the will service, or have you met with an estate planning attorney if that's your preference, or have you used our document service if that's your preference as well? Do you have the Genworth long-term care policy in place? If not, have you simply analyzed your situation to determine what is the best thing for you personally? Where are your personal beliefs around that? Where are the numbers? Are you watching segment rates? What are they doing? Are they going up? Are they going down? You've probably seen times at Chevron where people seemingly walk out the door en masse. Many times in the past 10 years, that's been due to fluctuations in segment rates, typically rising very dramatically in a short period of time. And they don't want to subject their lump sum to those increasing segment rates because that means it's, in some cases, tens of thousands of dollars loss to that lump sum, typically by a month or two. These things can change pretty quickly. Are your healthcare benefits ready? Did you make sure the physicians that you prefer are going to continue to accept the coverage that you take? And then how are you going to pay yourself? Where's the money going to come from 30 days after you retire? Is that architecture set up? The account that you're going to begin paying yourself an income from, is that linked to your bank account? Have you done any tax planning analysis? Brian will speak more on this to determine what your effective tax rate will be in retirement near term, and then you can optimize that longer term. Brian, you want to speak a little bit on holistic plan, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that with the vast majority of our clients, tax planning is a part of the conversation that's critical when you're in retirement. One of the reasons why is because you have the ability to kind of control your own tax bill from year to year. So if properly planned for, I can generate a low income tax year. So maybe that's where I want to utilize my net unrealized appreciation strategy. Or perhaps, particularly as I'm getting closer to 65, I want to make sure I'm flying below some of those key thresholds that are going to cause my Medicare premium to start to go up. That's a feature called the IRMA, and that can actually cost you literally thousands of dollars more per year if not properly planned for on Medicare premiums. So tax planning is absolutely a critical part, and every year we get to basically wipe the slate clean and retry again. But with proper planning in advance, we can help clients avoid big mistakes and take advantage of some really terrific opportunities.
So we take a look at the checklist. Does your retirement date align with maximizing the benefits? Do you need to sign up for Medicare or Social Security yet? One thing we didn't mention, we run a Social Security analysis for every single client. It is different. It is depending on one spouse's earnings, the other spouse's earnings, and their combination of ages. And it is not as straightforward as most people think. It's not as straightforward as I would expect looking at the service level. You want to see where the crossover is for you. It becomes a longevity decision in many ways. Have you set up your outside accounts to receive that lump sum? Get those wiring instructions to tell Chevron Pension actually where to deposit the lump sum, to make sure that that's a non-taxable event going from a retirement account to a retirement account. Are you capitalizing on those segment rate changes? Meaning if they're falling, if you waited 1 month, what does that look like? What does it do? Are you using NUA, which Brian talked about? This is a very unique tax planning tool, net unrealized appreciation, that applies the majority of the time to Chevron ESOP shares. If you take one thing away from this, is you typically don't want to get rid of those ESOP shares. They have a significant tax benefit, or at least if you're going to get rid of Chevron stock, have those be the last shares that you ever sell. If you're under 59 and a half, where will your income come from initially? You have some rules around that, specifically with IRAs, slightly different rules with the 401k that you need to consider. What are you going to do with your time after you retire? This is a challenge, frankly, for a lot of people. You hear it all the time with retirees that say, I don't know how I ever got anything done while I was working. I'm busier than I've ever been, which is true, but these things take time. It is a mindset change. Sometimes this comes with struggles. Talk to people that have gone through retirement. I think that's the best feedback I hear from individuals. And if you're going to work during retirement, what's that going to look like? This is not uncommon. We have a lot of people that do it, frankly, as a hobby, to keep their mind engaged. It's not necessarily a financial decision, but how does that affect your overall plan? Maybe it affects it. Maybe it's going to change some distribution strategies that you have with something.
So now one of the questions that might be coming to mind is, well, why would I work with Insight? What's the benefit there? And really, I think hopefully today you're getting a sense of just the breadth of all the factors that go into the decision around and the planning around retirement. And so partnering with a dedicated professional team that knows the nuances to all these different factors is, I think, an important consideration. So here at Insight, we really place a heavy emphasis on the planning process, on working with our clients diligently. So it's not uncommon where we start planning with a client 3, 5, even 10 years ahead of retirement. And we're consistently meeting with them to update their plan and review their strategy. Really, we are about building a relationship with the client. And importantly there, we are fiduciaries. That means that we have to put your interest ahead of ours. And if there's any conflict of interest, we have to clearly disclose that. And then going even further than that, we're a fee-only firm. And what that means is we're not here to sell products. There's really only two ways that we get paid at Insight. It's either through a financial plan fee or through managing clients' assets. Either way, it's crystal clear. There's not any ulterior motive of commissions that are clouding people's judgments. So Insight, we really pride ourselves on being transparent in our approach. Now, past just the Chevron benefits, there's a whole host of other discussions that we have with our clients. These do include things like the cash flow modeling, tax planning, how they want to allocate their portfolio to meet their short-term cash flow needs and their long-term growth needs. We determine that through our analysis as to what that looks like. Risk management, estate planning, all of these are factors that are in the conversation that we have with our clients routinely. And the reality is every single one of these areas, they can change occasionally. Rules around retirement plans have changed multiple times in the last 3, 4, 5 years. Estate plan rules can change. Insurance products can come onto the market or leave the market, as we see here in California, unfortunately, all too often. So again, life events can happen that cause you to maybe change your priorities. Our job is to have that understanding of your needs, your situation, and then be there and be ready to kind of proactively meet those changes that they develop. And so again, here at Insight, holistic firm that does comprehensive financial planning. We do have offices here in Northern California, just right down the street from the Chevron headquarters, San Ramon. And of course, we have offices in Houston, Texas. But frankly, we work with clients all across the country. We leverage the technology to have those meaningful conversations for clients, both California and in Texas, but really all across the country. And so, again, really want to thank you for your time today. If you have questions about this, you're curious about what it means to work with a financial advisor, absolutely feel free to reach out. We always offer a complimentary initial just consultation. It's an opportunity to talk, learn a little bit about you, share with you how we work. There's no commitment or cost to that. We just think it's a great opportunity to learn about one another. So if you're interested in something of that nature, absolutely feel free to give us a call on the 800 number you can see, send us an email, or reach out to our website and look to schedule something through the website. But I really want to, again, thank you for your time. Chad, any thoughts before we close out?
Yeah, no, great information, Brian. I appreciate it. I would tell you, if you have a question about something, don't hesitate to reach out. It's probably something we've come across before. We may have an answer to, even if we don't start a working relationship. It's not an issue. We enjoy helping people, especially when it comes to Chevron questions. It's pretty common. Thank you again for your time. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.